Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July the 22nd, 2019, Ground of Deportes. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's a wonderful time of the summer. Baseball is in full swing. NFL is opening up training camps. It's all exciting down here.
It's always exciting, but it's so hot. I mean, we having heat in California in the triple digits for most parts of the inland valleys. Over by the oceans is still up in the 90s. And so we want to make sure people keep hydrated. There have been some heat problems also on the East Coast. Just hearing a lot of challenges out there. Please stay hydrated. It's all fair in love and war. A lot of people swinging the bat in baseball. College football is becoming a big talk. They're already talking about who might win the Heisman Trophy. And we know that's always good when an old man, you ever hear of an old man strength? That's what Manny Pacquiao has, is old man strength. And you don't want to fight old men. I do want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. So Big C, I know with the heat down south, California heat's more dry, but heat is heat. How do you good old boys cope? Because I hear you can also drink too much water. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something that most people don't understand, is the too much consumption of water. You know, you throw off the body balance that you have, and actually you can cause organ damage by consuming too much water. So you got to drink in moderation, but you also got to make sure that you cool your skin.
Yeah.
That is the number one thing for us, keeping down the heat index on your body, is keeping your skin moist. I know we got a lot of humidity down here in the south, so we sweat all the time.
Yeah.
You know, people think that we're sweating because, you know, we're exercising. No, that's just from the humidity. You know, and also being overweight doesn't help either.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think we might be leaking a little oil along with that sweat from time to time.
So how does Rush Limbaugh live in that humid weather? Because he's always sweating. I thought because he was exercising. You said it's not because of exercise, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Johnson, you know, also with Rush, you know, too much Oxycontin, they you know, having, you know, perspirizing just a little bit too much from time to time. Rush has been known to dally in chemicals, you know, better life through chemistry, I guess, is his motto.
Well, you know, sports is big, and we know that Hitler, he had this Aryan nation. He wanted to prove some Aryan supremacy. And it was working until they started competing against black athletes. And then he realized, well, wait a minute, maybe all that Oxycontin they made is not working. But I was watching a documentary over the weekend, and I should have known this, but I heard that the Germans, they were using like Oxycontin and cocaine and other stimulants to help people stay awake for 3 days. And that was Adolf Hitler, and they experimented with people. They had a one-way ticket to experimentation. They wanted to see how long you could live. They didn't care if you got back, Big C. Does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, when you think of all the inventions of today's society, a lot of it came out of Nazi Germany with the experiments, unfortunately, that they did on human beings. They didn't use test animals. They actually used live human beings.
Yeah.
That's what advanced technology so fast in what we have today. When we look at skin grafting, you know, we look at organ transplants, Charlton.
Yeah.
All types of things that they did that were inhumane, that, you know, now they're using in proper medical science. But, you know, trying to invent a race of people that you felt were superior to everyone else. You know, the man was a madman at the time.
Yeah.
But they used a lot of the technology that the Germans used, the space race, which we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Apollo, you know, launch to the moon and coming back, Charlton.
Yep.
You know, that actually came from German scientists. When you think about the lead scientists in the Gemini space program, you know, the original space program of the United States, that was led by German scientists that they had brought over, that had created the rockets during World War II.
Well, we know that science is real, and when we talk about global warming, it was actually Einstein who was working with string theory, which means they talk about teleportation. I know some people don't believe in that, but they were doing a lot of stuff with ESP and moving things around with your mind. And I know oftentimes when kids have that power, they'll say, hey, you wrong, you got to go to a different kind of class. But a lot of inventions have been created trying to do good or bad for mankind. But I thought it was very interesting how they would keep guys awake for 3 days by injecting, whether it was cocaine or opioids or other stimulants into their bodies, and I thought it was crazy, but that's what madmen do. And speaking of madmen, and anybody's going through anything, I mean, everybody needs to be able to reach out and get some help. There's a national hotline that we give out. There's a suicide hotline, or sometimes people just going through depression. And sometimes it's people that you know, but they don't tell you. Oftentimes when they stop talking, there's something going on. They can still reach out 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. A lot of teenagers with school out, maybe another 3 weeks for a lot of people, maybe 4 at the most. A lot of kids, sometimes they deal with bullying. And they don't want to call, but they can text. You can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And hopefully they can get some help there. Big C, I want to jump right into this fight that Manny Pacquiao had. Now, Hitler was doing some type of experiments with injections, trying to, blood doping, different types of things to see if they could get more performance out of a human body. Now, here's a guy, Manny Pacquiao, and people keep saying, why does he keep fighting? Maybe it is tax problems. But if he can beat you and he has tax problems, that's a bad man, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, you think about it. You got to feel praise for anybody over 40 in the sports world to be able to come out and be victorious against a younger man. And Manny Pacquiao seemed to turn back the hands of time Saturday night in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
He spent the last 6 weeks sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber. We talked about modern technology.
Yeah.
The advancement that the modern day athlete has over the athlete from 30 and 40 years ago, which allows them to extend their career.
Yeah.
You mentioned briefly there about blood doping. I know that's something, I don't know if they have that in checking on boxers, but that will also increase the oxygen intake on the body. But to watch Manny Pacquiao perform in this fight, and, to do it in such a dominant way, I know it was a split decision, but it could have easily been a unanimous decision by Manny Pacquiao. I know he says he wants Floyd Mayweather once again. I know in the fight that they had, Floyd didn't box Manny, and Floyd hasn't boxed anybody in probably about 10 years.
Yeah.
He's one of the best track stars that the boxing arena has ever seen.
Carl Lewis.
I mean, this man runs more than a hockey player on skates. I mean, he is moving around.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it would be very interesting. And if the money is right,
they'll fight.
We could see a Pacquiao-Mayweather, but we're talking about a $300 million person. That's just for Floyd.
Yeah.
Floyd is not going to go out and
right.
box anybody for less than, $200 million. But in a Pacquiao-Floyd Mayweather fight, we're seeing a $500 million purse. Floyd would get 3, Pacquiao would get 2. And I think it's great for boxing because when we sit around and look at what the boxing arena has and we're comparing that to the MMA, the draw factor. I mean, Canelo Alvarez has been the biggest draws in the boxing ring in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I know they've talked about Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in the heavyweight ranks, but they're not sexy. They're just a big guys out there throwing haymakers.
Yeah.
We're looking for the entertainment aspect when it comes to boxing. I mean, boxing, name appeal. You look at boxing like you look at movies. Movies, there's no more one-hit wonders in movies now.
Right.
They talk about franchises. Something that you can go and it resonates over and over. You can remember the characters, like if you're watching, Tom Cruise, in Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
You're looking at Star Wars, things that have multiple episodes, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that you know the characters. This is what the sports arena wants. They want to know the characters. When we look at team sports, you want to know that a player has a long-term contract, that he's going to be there all the time.
Yep.
And that's what we need in boxing.
Yep.
We don't have those sexy matchups like Ali Frazier that we once had, that epic 3-fight battle between those two great titans.
Yeah.
We need to see that in the boxing world. We need the namesake boxers to be out there and come give us some entertainment.
Well, when you think about that, Big C, age is nothing but a number. I heard a young group saying that before. And when you think about people exercising, was it Jack LaLanne lived into the mid-90s and he was juicing, and now people talk about juicing.
You can't talk about steroids on the show.
No, but he meant juicing naturally.
Okay.
Well, because there's two types of nutrition. There's the illegal kind and there's the legal kind. And when I think about Jack LaLanne, he lived into his mid-90s, but he did it the right way. As far as we know, who knows what Jack did to do what he was doing. But if there was a fight with Mayweather and Pacquiao, now the appeal would be, can someone beat Mayweather? Can someone break that record so he can't be the undefeated champion? They would have to. They already tried it with an MMA guy. That didn't work out too well. They want to see, can they beat this black dude? Because if Pacquiao and Mayweather fight again, they have old timers and new people that would watch. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, everybody watching, and that's that franchise appeal that I talked about. But you got to think about Floyd Mayweather when you think about the lifestyle that he leads. I mean, millions of dollars a year Floyd Mayweather flashes around and spends. When you got that type of money going out, eventually you got to have some coming in. And he hasn't fought anybody since he fought that exhibition over in Japan, and I think he made like $3 million for 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. So Floyd is needing something with a big payday to attract him to come back out of retirement and get back into the ring.
Well, do you think $300 million would attract most people to get up and do something big, even if the fight lasts around?
But flies, you'll get something.
Well, I think it's great. What I don't want to see, and I know it's a good and bad thing that Pacquiao won, because I remember in many of the Rocky movies, and don't laugh, but cut me, Mick, and they didn't throw in the towel. And watching Creed, and when Apollo Creed was again, it's Rocky, but Apollo Creed lost his life in the ring because they didn't stop the fight. And then Drago, when his son was in that same situation many moons later, Drago stopped the fight on his son. Now, who's going to stop the fight for Pacquiao? Pacquiao already had a friend die in the ring because someone didn't stop the punishment. Now, I don't want to see this happen to him or even have some issues like Muhammad Ali suffered. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, all boxers face that inevitable of being hit in the head over and over, which is going to lead to concussions. I mean, boxers have concussions every match.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about football players and going through concussion protocol. I mean, you see boxers every time they get dazed, they're concussed. Every time they get dazed, they give them a standing 8 count, Charlton, and tell them keep going. But they're concussed at that point.
Yeah.
There's been many deaths in the rings over the decades of boxing, professional, even amateur boxing, Charlton. But when we look at Pacquiao's situation, and even what he did to Thurman in this championship fight, Thurman's first loss of his professional career.
Yeah.
Pacquiao changed up what he did professionally. He attacked the body, Charlton.
Yeah.
He didn't sit there and just attack the head. I know in boxing you kill the head.
Yeah. I think we're having just a little bit of trouble. Hold on one second, Big C. All right, Big C, I think we got you back. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty, but we'll still keep going. I know they say in boxing, you kill the head, the body will die. They don't mean it literally, but that's what they mean to win the fight. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, also, Chalkin, if you kill the body, the head will die. You know, it follows. I mean, you make weakness. You find out from athletes how strong they are through the body.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things you always want to work.
All right, we have you back, Big C. Having a little bit of technical difficulties, but the show must go on. But again, with boxing, I'll just let you finish your thoughts about, they always say go to the head, and Pacquiao was definitely doing that in his fight, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to go to the head, but that body, I mean, once you wear down the core of a boxer, I mean, those gloves will drop, and it's going to make that chin more vulnerable, and we can see that with Pacquiao. I know in his second knockdown of Thurman, he hit him with a liver shot. Thurman dropped the gloves. He came over the hand over the top with a right-handed hook across the jaw, Charlton, and dropped him.
Yeah.
But that's what boxers have to do. You got to work all aspects of the game. If you're one-dimensional and you're just hand-hunting out there, generally you're not going to win.
Yeah.
Time and time again, we've seen fighters try to do that.
Yeah, and so just congratulations, Pacquiao. Don't want to see him get hurt, but boxing is not for people who are afraid of getting hurt. It's for people who want to go on and keep winning. I don't know if he'll fight again with Mayweather, but if they do, I would have to say I would be one of the guys there watching it just like everybody else. So congratulations, the great Manny Pacquiao. Big C, I want to go across the pond. When you look at the British Open Championship, time has come and gone again. Shane Lowry, 15 under. He had a 6-shot victory. And without Tiger or Phil, being major competitors and missing the cut, the era of golfing, it's easy to write somebody up, but Tiger still won a major this year. He won the green jacket, so I'm not going to say Tiger's done, but it's been many, many moons for Phil. Now, with another winner, no one really seems to care that Shane Lowry won, other than Shane Lowry and a few people. Bixie, your thoughts?
Well, it seemed like Shane Lowry was going to choke on the first hole, Charlton, when he comes out there and gets a bogey.
Yeah.
But, when you talked about Phil and Tiger not being around for the weekend, and even Roy McIlroy, who holds the course record, they're on that course with a 61.
Yeah.
But, the thing about Tiger, Charlton, Tiger and Phil brought out the casual golfer, the guy who was not there for every tournament.
Yeah.
They made it must-see television and must-see tournaments. That's what the draw was for Tiger and Phil, and especially with Tiger by being an African American.
Yeah.
He made it chic for everybody of culture to go out and watch golf. Now, it no longer became a sport of just the white aristocrats.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods broke that barrier. Even though we had Lee Trevino back in the 70s, it did not have the same appeal as having an African American dominate the world. Not just a couple of tournaments, but dominate the world.
Yeah.
And now when we look at what happened over the weekend in the British Open, you got to even look at it from a crowd perspective. It wasn't there. The magnetism on the television wasn't there because the drama did not exist. The top American was Jordan Spieth.
Yeah.
But he wasn't in the running realistically. So when you lose those big names that have carried golf, really, Charlton, for the last 2 decades, that's what has happened. I mean, it's a changing of the torch when it comes down to that. So as we look at golf, unless you're a golf purist, you're really not going to pay attention to all the tournaments, Charlton. You might tune in for the majors.
Right.
But Tiger and Phil, they're not as competitive as the young guys out there. They don't have the time. They are both family men, Charlton. They have teenage children that demand a lot of times. They're going to soccer practice.
Yeah.
They're going to dance practice, Charlton. They're going to proms. These are the things they're doing. Little League. So as a dad, like any dad in America, when you start devoting your time as a parent, your profession sometimes suffers from it.
Yeah, it does. And you look at J.B. Holmes, and he was tied with Lowry at one point at -8. And then when Lowry just pulled away, it's good for him. But my goodness, no matter what anybody says, it's not good for golf when you have guys like Tiger and Phil and McIlroy not making the cut. And when they're that talented, you can't say they're not interested, but sometimes you just don't have it in you. But still, congratulations to Lowry. I don't think he's going to sign many sponsorships because of his win, because a lot of people aren't going to get too excited that he won. And I want to know, from your opinion, is that good or is that bad for the game of golf when they have a first-time champion, and like they say, sometimes nobody really cares? Bixie, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at it, it is good because now the wealth is spread around. When you look at golf, we're talking about the golf purists who pay attention to the game, not the casual fan that comes in because certain names are playing. I mean, you go to an NBA game, and you got the worst team in the league. The fans that are there are always there. You go to Madison Square Garden. Those Knicks fans are always there, win or lose, because they're true fans.
Yeah.
They're not worried about who's coming into town. They always are buying their seats.
Yeah.
It's the same thing about golf. Tiger and Phil made it sexy because there was a rivalry. Just like Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus made it sexy because there was a rivalry. Every sport has rivalries in it.
Yeah.
Golf is looking for that next rivalry. But the purists of golf, who have always been there on the links, even before Tiger and even after Tiger, they will always be on the course and tuning in, regardless who the next champion is. But to have a diversity now of champions, even when Tiger was at the height of his game, he didn't win all the tournaments.
No, that's true.
So there was always other champions going in there. I mean, when you think about the link between Tiger's Masters wins, 15 years, I mean, there was always other champions winning the Masters.
Yeah.
It wasn't, the golf game doesn't go away because Tiger and Phil are not competitive.
Yeah, that's very true. So congratulations, Mr. Lowry, and I'm sure he was very happy for him. But there's also something to say about athletes. In golf, you don't have to be in shape to win. Maybe you could say that about baseball. Not every baseball player is in great shape. I think sometimes we take for granted what NBA players look like and how finely tuned they are, because he just doesn't look like a world-class athlete, but you don't have to be to win a championship.
He didn't look like a world-class athlete when he came into the NBA at 300 pounds and 6'4" either.
Yeah, well, he's rare though. Most athletes look like they're athletes, and Lowry doesn't. Maybe because of seeing Koepka and Tiger and guys like that in speed, they're in better shape. But it gives a guy that doesn't want to eat right the best chance also, Big C. So congratulations to that. I do want to jump into some talk about the NFL, because sports is $1 billion industry, and boys and girls sports, is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And when you think about billionaires, that's what the NFL owners are. But I want to get your thoughts on something. The commissioner is there for the owners, and the owners of each team will receive $275 million this year, and that's prior to opening kickoff. And when you tie that in with the Tyreek Hill non-suspension last week, is it time for the commissioner to get out of the business of discipline in the NFL? We know he's going to have to answer to the owners. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's something that the players need to look into at the end of the 2020 season when they have the new collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that the commissioner should remove himself from that aspect of discipline. You need an independent arbitrator to come in and judge where a player needs to be disciplined or not disciplined. You've given the commissioner too much power over the years. He is a financial benefactor of the owners of the league, Charlton, and he well should be because of the amount of money he makes them through negotiating these TV contracts and endorsement. But also to have a double-edged sword where you're out there disciplining a player.
Yeah.
We've talked about this, that if players are not disciplined in society, why should they be disciplined by the league? I understand that the league has conduct policies in the contracts, and every player needs to be held to that high standard of protecting the shield.
Yeah.
But when you're a judge and jury, without any situation that, you get an arbitrator to come in and balance the weight of the severity of whatever incident it may be.
Yeah.
Whether it's a drug incident, Charlton, domestic violence, DUI, or performance enhancement, the commissioner needs to take a step back because he has too many hats that he's trying to wear.
Yeah. Well,
arbitration is done in the court system. I mean, when there's a settlement to be done, arbitrators come in to find a mutual agreement between the sides. They weigh the evidence. And when I look at the Tyreek Hill incident, a lot of these people who bring these incidents against players, they come in a moment of haste.
Yeah.
And they look at it. And I don't know what happens behind the scenes. We all, as the public, sit out and want to draw an opinion from what news outlet
we know. Yeah.
We don't know the total accuracy of anything.
Right.
But Tyreek Hill has a history with this woman going all the way back to Oklahoma State. For some reason, they're drawn to each other from the negativity and the positivity aspect.
Yeah.
One thing that's positive from her aspect, she doesn't want to lose the money flow.
Right.
That's where she is. She's chased this since college, and she's hung in there. There's times when things may be uncomfortable. I'm not going to draw a conclusion because I'm not the arbitrator, I'm not the commissioner, I'm not the police.
Yeah.
But there needs to be somebody who is not connected to the NFL when it comes to disciplining of players that looks at it from an outside perspective and can't be within the region of that team, Charlton. So the NFL needs to have multiple regional arbitrators to come in and look at these situations. Yeah,
and I'll just add my own 2 cents. If somebody's breaking a baby's arm, that guy should be in jail. Now, who did it? Maybe it broke itself. But for women going through domestic violence, there's not enough money in the world, not enough money in the universe to have yourself have your life ended by some knucklehead or end up in the hospital, especially your child. There's just something, but everybody has to go by what they love. I want to also,
think about society. I mean, think about how many abusive situations there are outside of sports. When we look at the abusive situations in sport or the alleged abusive situations in sport, that's a small percentage of society compared to what goes on every day in mainstream. Think about people who have been in relationships and they stay in these abusive relationships, Jonathan, because they don't want to lose the money. They don't want to lose the house. They don't want to lose the credit cards. They don't want to lose the cars. And so they stay in these situations. And, but we polarize it when it comes to athletes. We take athletes out of mainstream society because of the mantra that they carry as far as their job title.
Yeah.
But you have to look at them like you look at mainstream society. I don't know what happened to the child, and I wish that nobody would ever harm a child anywhere in life. The president is harming more children than anybody in America. So let's be straight on that. Children get injured in all kind of ways. You take your child to the hospital, to the emergency room, they're going to separate you from your child and try to find out what happened. Right off the bat, you're guilty. If you take your child to the emergency room and that child is injured, whether that child has a bruise, a sprain, a cut or something, you're automatically guilty. They will call in law enforcement and they will come in and examine the situation. So regardless of how much money you have, that's the first thing that's going to happen.
Well, that happens to them. We got to protect kids at all costs. And some people, they don't mind staying in that type of relationship But I do want to focus on, and also one more thing, POTUS did make it more difficult for women to come forward, and you can Google that as well. I want to just look at some of the things going on with the NFL. I know Julio Jones in his situation, whether he's signed at this moment, I don't know, but I know he showed up at camp, and he wants to be, and he should be, one of the top played receivers. But Ryan has to know that he's one of the top guys, too, in the league to throw in the ball more, Big C. When you look at some of the top paid wide receivers in the league, could you believe Brandon Cooks makes $27,500,000 a year. I think he dropped 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at these players, and everybody's constantly talking about renegotiating their contracts. If a player wants to renegotiate his contract all the time, why don't you sign a 1-year deal? Base it on 1-year performance. But players want to sign 4- and 5-year deals because that's the max money at that time. They want guarantees.
Yeah.
They don't want to bet on their future, Charlton. If you're an intelligent athlete, regardless of the sport, sign continuous 1-year deals. And we just saw this in NBA free agency. Everybody said, well, he can get max money. He can get a 4-year deal. He can get a 5-year deal for $178 to $211 million.
Yeah. Yep.
If a player is banking on how good he is, why don't you just sign a 1-year contract instead of talking about holding out a training camp, that this guy is making more money than me, because you sign your deal based on market value at that time.
Yeah,
when
at that time.
Julio Jones signed his deal 3 years ago. Last year, he held out of training camp because he wanted more money. The owner bought him another $3.5 million. He gave him some pocket change to walk around with.
Yeah.
But you can't keep holding out every year saying, okay, I got 3 years left on my contract and I'm not happy.
Show me the money.
Hold out of training camp.
Yeah.
You got to realize you're going to be replaced eventually, and I understand that all professional athletes want to optimize their money in the short window that they have. But if you feel that good about yourself and your money, say, okay, I'm going to take a 1-year, $20 million contract. That's what the franchise tag is. When your contract runs out, you're refusing to sign.
Yep.
They slap you with the franchise tag. Le'Veon Bell, franchise tag.
Yeah.
We saw that for 2 years in Pittsburgh, franchise tag. It's the same amount of money that the top 3 receivers get in the league. So if you want to do it, just sign a 1-year contract. Let them keep franchising you.
Well, the players are too smart to do that because they're going to get as much as they can. And we know TV revenue is going to go up again. Mike Evans for Tampa, $20 million a year, and Tampa didn't make the playoffs. Odell Beckham now with Cleveland, $17 million a year. How long will that relationship last if he's not getting enough balls thrown at him, with Baker Mayfield being the prodigal son of Cleveland, at least for football? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when I think about Odell Beckham is a showman. Everybody wants to think that Odell Beckham made the greatest catch in Giant history on that Sunday night game
against
versus
Dallas.
The Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
That wasn't even the greatest catch in Giant history.
Yeah.
The greatest catch in New York Giant history was, David Tyree.
In the Super Bowl. Yeah.
The helmet catch. That's the greatest catch in Giant history. You ask Giant fans what's the greatest catch in their history, they're going to tell you David Tyree in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The Patriots, because it got him a ring.
Yeah.
The catch that, Odell Beckham made didn't even get him to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So Odell Beckham has been a showman ever since he's been in the New York area. Now he's in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Will he have the fanfare in Cleveland? Yes, he will, because they have the most loyal fans in all of football, because they lose and they still got a packed house.
They still got a packed house.
We were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
They got a packed house. They're not fair weather people. They have big expectations, but you also, with big expectations, become big, disappointments also.
Yeah.
When you look at the number of people that the Browns have to get the football to, they have 5 stars on the football offense, Charlton, that are not quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You have 2 outstanding running backs. You have an outstanding tight end. You have actually 3 outstanding receivers. So you got 6 stars, Charlton, trying to share the football.
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem, not just for Odell Beckham and Baker Mayfield, but for everybody.
Yeah.
How do you pacify all of these people, and you have a rookie head coach? How will he manage all these egos?
I think about the Raiders, Antonio Brown. Amari Cooper, he had a decent season for the Raiders, but then Carr digressed a little bit. And then he went to Dallas. I remember in a game, it was week 14 against Philadelphia in Dallas, and he had Dak Prescott throwing the ball, and he had all over about 170 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game in Week 14 for the Cowboys against the Eagles. Now, we know the Eagles have been a consistent playoff team. But then, in the Raiders situation, it's not like I don't know if it's him or Carr, but he didn't have the same numbers. But Carr gets maximum money, and Jerry Jones still doesn't know if he wants to pay Prescott. But if Antonio Brown goes from a Hall of Fame quarterback in Big Ben Roethlisberger to Carr, and I like Carr as a person, but if Carr can't keep his receivers, Crabtree's gone, Cooper's gone, and they had good seasons when they left Oakland, how is Antonio Brown going to come to Oakland and have success, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Jared Cook left also at tight end. He's going to be in New Orleans and most likely All-Pro this year. You know, you got to look at the Raiders from the offensive line aspect.
Yeah.
The Raiders haven't done anything to upgrade their offensive line. Yes, they've signed a couple of free agents, but they paid them too much money. And we've seen in the NFL when you pay these offensive linemen too much money, that they don't know how to block anybody. They're sitting there still, flicking their wrist, counting the bills.
Yeah.
And that's where the Raiders are right now. I'm not sold on John Gruden really understanding the new NFL from what it was, when he coached over a decade ago.
Yeah.
That he can make the adjustments to come up to speed with the mentality of the players and the talent of the game, how it's changed. You stay out of anything for a decade, you're just not going to be able to walk in and dominate it.
Imagine
the Raiders are sitting there in this situation. John Gruden showed last year he had a personality conflict with players.
Yeah.
How do you change that? That's the reason why he hired Mike Mayock as a GM. He needed somebody to pass the blame off to.
Yeah, and when you get rid of your best players, that shows something. You keep guys that aren't really named players, and you hope to win with them. Last receiver I want to touch on before I get into some other things. I want to ask you about Golden Tate. He's with the Giants now. He's making $15 million a year. So to get rid of Beckham, who just made $2 million more, they could have kept him because at least he was proven, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the reason why you let Beckham go, because you don't want Beckham distracting from Eli Manning.
Yeah.
The pressure would be on Eli Manning more with Odell Beckham around than it will be with Golden Tate.
Yeah.
You have this high-profile wide receiver with personality with the media and the NFL.
Yeah.
And now you're going to tell him that, Eli Manning is not the problem. You look at Eli Manning's productivity.
Yeah.
He has not done anything realistically in the past couple of years.
No.
That's the problem with him. But you got Odell Beckham demanding the ball and the media paying all this attention to him. He was a distraction to Eli Manning.
Yeah.
So Odell had to go.
Yeah, sometimes you got to let people know who the prodigal son is, and you let go of the guys that may tell the truth because some people don't want to handle the truth. I want to say sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And when you want to know more about what's going on in the sports world, follow Big C Sports. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause. We'll be right back in just a moment. All right, we are back on the Big C Sports Show, coming back from the Big C pause. And I want to tell you, I love what we're doing with Big C Sports. Big C Sports is obviously our podcast is aired on the #1 podcast network in the United States of America, iHeartRadio. You can follow Big C Sports Podcast on iHeartRadio. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. You can follow on television with Xfinity Comcast. You can follow Big C Sports. But what I really love is the app called Alexa. All you have to do is say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C. He'll do his thing. And I really want to thank our sponsors for all of their support. Big C, I want to ask you, we talk about sports being a billion-dollar industry and boys and girls sports being the foundation of this billion-dollar industry. When you think about professional athletes, should professional sports, mainly the NFL, should they start evaluating players for mental health issues, noting all the off-field incidents that have been occurring over the last 2 decades? Now, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that. They want to say, well, it happens in other industries too. But a lot of industries don't pay guys $20 million a year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I've long thought that the NFL should have some type of mental awareness programs in the league, Jonathan. They stayed away from that because then they would have had to touch on concussions years ago. And they just brought that to the forefront. many people that have suffered concussions, Charlton, will suffer lingering mental issues. And when we look at the stress of professional athletes, when you get away from the game, what do you do to take care of that stressful time that you're going to go through?
Yep.
You have your team and you have your workouts to deal with, Charlton, during the season. But when you look at the mental issue of athletes, and mainly football players, this is something that the NFL needs to put in the collective bargaining agreement. Everybody needs to go through psychological evaluations a couple times a year minimum. It should be part of the player's conduct code, Charlton, that you go through these psychological and mental evaluation. You need to go through neurological exams.
Yeah.
The issues that NFL players are continuously having off the field is we see these multiple incidents constantly occur, whether it's Ezekiel Elliott, whether it's Tyreek Hill, whether it's Kareem Hunt, and many, many more, Charlton. Richie Incognito, when he was playing before with the Dolphins and the 49ers.
Kellen Winslow Jr.
These players have mental problems, Charlton.
Yeah.
But the league doesn't want to address it because the league will show vulnerability if they make that a spotlight issue.
Yeah. I was watching this program over the weekend. They talked about Emmitt Smith. He's the all-time leading rusher in the NFL. And I believe at the time he left Florida, he was one of the all-time leading rushers at Florida, maybe in the top 5. Maybe still has that record. He also went to Escambia High School in Florida and helped them win 3 state championships. Here's a guy that did not have breakaway speed. He stood about 5'10", 5'11", and he probably ran about a good 4.6 40, but he was shifty and he was hard to bring down. But he talked about life after football. He's a successful real estate guy now. But a lot of times people go the opposite way because they do need some help. But it's always great when you hear good feel-good stories. And guys like Roger Staubach has them, and Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, a lot of guys going to do great things. But I do think they need some help. I want to just say we love so much talking about NFL football. And it's always, to me, you wonder where guys came from. Everybody has their own opinion about how good somebody is and if they're going to make it, like Emmitt Smith out of Escambia High School, become one of the top recruits in the country, went to Florida, and then drafted in by the Dallas Cowboys. They really wanted a linebacker out of Baylor, but they picked Emmitt when the linebacker got away, and the rest is history. But I want to get your thoughts on the 10 most underrated college quarterbacks for the 2019 season. And we know with Jackson last year, Louisville being drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, helping them get to a playoff game. You can't always go by media telling you guys should play defensive back, Big C. So I want to get your thoughts on a couple of guys. And the first guy to start with, say Jamar Smith, Louisiana Tech last year. He passed for a career 3,160 yards. He had 31 touchdowns, and he even rushed for 530 yards. That's a prototype NFL quarterback, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's one of those guys that's going to fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Because of where he is at Louisiana Tech. If anybody understands the history of college and professional football, there's a quarterback that won 4 Super Bowls
Jerry Bradshaw.
at Louisiana Tech.
Yep.
That did not have those same type of statistical numbers.
Yep.
But when we look at this quarterback coming out of Louisiana Tech, Jamar Smith, Charlton, one of the knocks on him is that he's African American. Now, if you're a white quarterback with statistics like that, you're a bona fide first-round draft pick
immediately.
Yeah. This is a quarterback that a team needs to look at, Charlton, and take a chance on. The numbers that he exudes, these are Lamar Jackson-type numbers. But by being at Louisiana Tech, he's under the radar. His numbers are equal to any of the quarterbacks that they talk about being in the top 10 quarterbacks. His numbers are actually better than Justin Herbert out of Oregon. Yeah,
well, another player, and I love what you see. He reminds me of Aaron McNair, also Big C. I'll take the number 9 guy, Brandon Wimbush, University of Central Florida transfer from Notre Dame, and has thrown for 1,870 yards and 16 touchdowns. He's also rushed for 803 yards and 14 touchdowns, so he's accounted for 30 touchdowns. Now, you play defense. If you're a defensive coordinator, you got a guy that can rush for nearly 1,000 and pass for nearly 2,000. He's more difficult to game plan against than a guy who passes for 3,000 and only rushes for maybe 200. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Brandon Wimbush has proven that he can play on the big stage. He lost his starting job to Ed Book last year after being 5-0 as a starter and transferred to Central Florida.
Yeah.
I think this is a great move for Brandon Wimbush. Bush. He's going to be united with Charlie Strong down there. We know that Charlie Strong knows how to work with athletes. Brandon Bush gets a lease on life by going to Central Florida, Charlton, and I think he's going to prove all his doubters wrong by being one of the elite quarterbacks in the country.
Well, I think you're right. That when you find anyone that talented, Jamil Holloway back in Oklahoma, I want to say 85 season, won a national championship because he played like a lot of these guys, and he wasn't as tall, but had the same type of skills, Big C. I want to say the number 8 guy. I like a guy named Anthony Brown. He's out of Boston College. He threw for 2,121 yards and 20 touchdowns playing for Boston College. I believe if given the chance, he was a better quarterback than Doug Flutie, who also played at Boston College. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about it, Charlton, and he has a solid run game up there, also playing in the ACC. So he's playing against top-flight challenge every year. And this young man was just a freshman last year.
Yeah.
So he's going to make waves in the ACC, Charlton. He has nothing but growth ahead of him. Boston College is always one of those teams with tremendous offensive linemen, so he's going to get the protection, and he's going to grow a lot more this year.
Well, here's a player that a lot of people may not know of. James Morgan, Florida International University, passed for 2,727 yards. He had 26 touchdowns. He only threw 7 interceptions, and I know accuracy is important. They may tout guys that throw for 3,000 yards, but they may have 12 picks. This guy threw for 2,700 yards, only had 7 picks. Big C, your thoughts?
Very efficient with the football, Charlton. He's not going to take chances, and this is what you talk about. The maturation of young quarterbacks. This is what the NFL has always looked for. A guy with the touchdown to interception ratio. It's right there. Florida International should have an outstanding season this year and get to a mid-level bowl game.
Yeah, they will. And it's something about that state of Florida. When you look at how many top athletes and players come out of Florida, when you have Florida State, you have Florida, you have Miami, there's Central Florida, there's South Florida. Now you have Florida International. And not to mention they have a slew of junior colleges that just have top athletes. And now coming out of Florida International, they may overlook him, but if he were playing in the Midwest, maybe in the Big 8 or now the Big 12, or maybe even in the Mid-American Conference, there'd be a lot more people that would look at him. But being in Florida, surrounded by those high-quality programs, it may take them more time to look through the bushes and find him. I want to say the number 6 guy, Shane Boucher, out of SMU, threw for 2,958 yards and 21 scores. He had a couple yards called back, catches called back. So I'm going to give him 3,000 yards. But SMU is an up-and-coming program. They have a beautiful stadium. They're not what they were back in the days of the Pony Express. But here's another quarterback that should get a lot of attention. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at Shane Bussell, just 2 years ago, he was a starter at University of Texas.
Yeah.
And injury forced him to lose his starting job. Sam Ehlinger took over. But he came across the state, Charlton, and went to Dallas to SMU. This is a young man that has all the moxie of a big-time program quarterback. And so I expect him to lift SMU to new heights. You know, he has dealt with the pressure of the big-time games, so the stage is not too large for him at SMU.
Is there a thinking, and I want to get your thoughts on it, but I know I was looking at some older games last night. It was it was LSU playing Texas A&M, and they were at Kyle Field down in Texas. And I remember a time when you had most of the Texas programs, they competed against each other, whether they were in the old Southwest Conference or not. But it would be great for teams like Houston and also SMU to play at that upper echelon level of Texas and Texas A&M, because they would get the top players to come in there. But I want to get your thoughts on a number 5 player, Brady White. He's out of Memphis. Big C, this kid threw for 3,696 yards, actually 3,296 yards. He had 26 touchdowns, and he only had 9 interceptions. But he's not really on the radar, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at Memphis and this program down there, they produce high prolific offense, Charlton, year after year. You remember the kid that Denver drafted a couple of years ago in the first round?
Paxton Lynch.
Yeah,
Paxton Lynch.
Paxton Lynch.
Yeah.
But this is a program that's built for quarterbacks.
Yeah, they are.
You're going to develop. You're going to learn how to throw the ball. They score a lot of points down there. Memphis will get you an opportunity to be looked at, and that's what this young man is going to get.
Yeah, they're thought about mostly as a good basketball program, but I really think they've had some good football players over the years, and hopefully he'll get more attention. I want to jump to the number 4 player. Now, when you think about these players, if they played for schools that won more, then they would get credit for the wins. But if your team is not winning as much, then they'll get blamed for the losses. But there's a kid out of the Midwest by the name of Peyton Ramsey. At Indiana, he passed for 2,875 yards, 19 touchdowns, a little high on the picks at 13 interceptions, but he also added 354 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns. So he's a multi-dimensional quarterback, one of those run-pass option quarterbacks that could find success at the next level. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Ramsey and the talent that he has to go up against, Charlton, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, this is a guy that's holding his own in the Big Ten. This program at Indiana is turning around, and it's been led by Ramsey. They're going to challenge in the Big Ten. This is a team that I can see winning 8 to 9 games. You got to also look at Wisconsin in the mix in the Big Ten.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, when you get the chance to play in the backyard of a lot of the name programs, you'll find some of the programs that aren't big name programs that have better players. They're just not in the spotlight as much. And here's one of those players. You got to go all the way across the Pacific Ocean, Big C. Cole McDonald. McDonald's, I bought a McDonald's hamburger in Hawaii. It was $5 for a Big Mac. Back in the States, you get a Big Mac for about $3.50. It was almost $6. And when they add tax, it was over $6. Big C, are the cows more expensive in Hawaii?
Well, you got to look at the limited amount of grass that they got over there for the each.
Yeah.
That beef got to be shipped in. So everything is, I mean, my guy over there spent $6 for a gallon of milk.
Yeah. I thought, my goodness, I thought I ordered the meal, but they no, it was just for the burger over $6. But Cole McDonald out of Hawaii, University of Hawaii, passed for 3,875 yards and 36 touchdowns. He only had 10 picks. Now, the thing I like about him is when you look at Hawaii's games, every road game, they have to travel for 3,000 miles. Their closest game is when they play at San Diego State and Fresno State and San Jose State on the West Coast. Most of their games, I mean, all of their home games, of course, and they don't play as many as they do because they stay on the islands, on the mainland a lot. But when you have your closest road game is 3,000 miles away, and you still can throw for almost 4,000 yards and only have 10 picks, Big C, that's pretty accurate. Your thoughts?
When you think about that, Charlton, those are kind of pedestrian numbers when you think about the history of the Hawaii quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You think about Timmy Chane and Colt Brennan, both of those quarterbacks threw for over 5,000 yards in a single season out at the University of Hawaii, Charlton. But this has been a program that has been producing throwers that they can do that.
Yeah.
And you know, when you think about it, as you talked about close home games, 3,000 miles away.
What a flight.
But, you know, and people on the East Coast don't get a chance to see an Hawaii home game.
Yeah.
You think about the 6-hour time difference, Charlton, of an Hawaii home game kicking off at 7 o'clock in Hawaii. It's 3 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So people don't get a chance to see these great young quarterbacks.
Yeah, I love Hawaii. It's a beautiful place. Everybody should go there at least a couple of times. I want to get to another guy because he comes out of what could be called quarterback U down south when you think of the great Patrick Mahomes. And also, he beat out Baker Mayfield down in Texas Tech. But Alec Baldwin, Texas Tech as a freshman, he threw for 2,638 yards, 17 touchdowns. He had a career-high 605 yards and 5 touchdowns versus Houston. Here's a kid, Big C, a freshman did that. Imagine how good he's going to be in his sophomore and junior season because I doubt if he'll play as a senior. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you think about it, he amassed those numbers in only 8 games last year because he was injured.
Yeah.
So if he can stay healthy on the season, the Big 12 is looking at a dynamic quarterback, Charlton, that he can easily amass over 4,000 yards passing. And we know they've had that red gun offense out there in Texas Tech, even though Cliff Kingsbury is gone, Charlton. It was started by Mike Leach. I expect the next guy up, Charlton, to have that same type of offensive dynamics, and we're going to see big numbers from this young man once again.
Oh, yeah. If you could do that as a freshman, and you just come off of playing against high school defensive backs and linebackers and linemen, and you come into a Big 12 conference, and people were saying, well, the Big 12 is somewhat down, but it's not. You have some great programs in the Big 12, and sometimes they're just overlooked because they're not playing for that national championship game. But I'll say one of the top guys. I like this kid. Maybe a lot of people don't because he's coming from a conference where they're not going to win a national championship. But Jake Bentley, South Carolina, he threw for 3,171 yards, Big C, he had 27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, got to cut down on that. But he's playing against many of the best defenses in college football, and he completed 61% of his passes. And when you're at South Carolina, you're not playing teams that can't play defense. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about that, Jonathan. We talked about the SEC last week. This was a conference that had 5 teams with double-digit victories.
Yeah.
South Carolina was on the outside looking in, but when you got Jake Bentley at quarterback, this gives you an opportunity to be competitive in that conference, Jonathan.
Yep.
And you talk about the numbers that he had. I know everybody in that conference talk about Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama, but Jake Bentley is right there nipping on his heels. They talk about Jake Fromm at Georgia.
Yeah.
He actually had a better year than Jake Fromm
Yeah.
at Georgia, Jonathan. He just needs some more help from his teammates.
He needs more help from his teammates, and it's just a matter of getting your opportunity. There are a lot of players who want to play for the best programs, and people think, well, this guy threw for that kind of yards, maybe he should have played at Alabama or Auburn or Georgia, but they have their own great teams and their own great players. But it's just about how you play against the competition, and that's why I'm making my number one even more than the guys who threw for more yards than him. I want to just say, in the final few minutes of our program today, about 10 minutes left on Big C Sports, I know everybody has their own opinion, but when you look at some of the top national championship programs, you can go back 40 years, you can go back over the last 10 years. But I like the program with Vince Young at Texas that upset USC in the Rose Bowl. I thought that was an anomaly of a win because of Reggie Bush and throwing the football forward when he was on the 20-yard line, and Matt Leinart throwing a pick in the end zone. And you can always look at players and find excuses, but Texas found a way to win that game on the road, snapping USC's 35-game win streak. I like that program because Vince Young came off back-to-back Rose Bowls versus Michigan and USC, had 800 yards of total offense. I like him. Tim Tebow, also I like what he was doing with Florida back in the day. But I like the Southern Cal programs too, especially the one that beat Oklahoma 55-19. But when you think about some of the top national championship programs, I know you'll say Alabama because you're a Southern boy, Big C, but give me some of your thoughts.
Well, I mean, how do you look past Alabama, Jonathan? This is a program that's won 5 or 6 national titles in the last decade and a half.
Yeah.
So when you talk about pure dominance on the national stage, Alabama exudes that. They get the top athletes. They've won consistently, Jonathan, and they've won by losing coaches. You think about the number of coaches that Alabama has been a feeder program for. Nick Saban hasn't held on to many coaches over the last 10 years. They've all gotten an opportunity to go out and start their own program.
Yeah.
So when you just look at pure dominance, how can you compare any program in the modern era against Alabama? And second in line, I got to look at what Dabo Swinney has done in Clemson.
Yeah.
Consistency, Jonathan. That's what dominance in college football is all about. Consistency. And Dabo Swinney, here it is. He's been in the playoffs the last 4 years.
Yeah.
3 of the last 4 years, Jonathan, he's been in the national championship game and won 2 of those 3. So these are programs that have risen to the crescendo of college football right now.
Yeah.
I go back to the University of Miami program. To win with multiple coaches, Charlton, that hasn't been done before. To win that consistently with multiple coaches. You start with Snellenberger, you go with Erickson, you go with Croker, Charlton.
Yeah.
These coaches, Jimmy Johnson, they won national titles, and they were kind of, as you were saying, screwed out of a couple of us.
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah.
So when you look at what Miami did during that tenure with those 4 coaches, Charlton,
yeah,
they had to be the most dominant program in college football at that time, something that Alabama went on to do and Clemson is trying to do right now.
Would you just go back to the era of the great Tom Osborne and what they were doing with Nebraska? I know that there was a time when Nebraska beat Florida in a national championship game, and I think they scored 65 points. Tommy Frazier was the quarterback, and they had Lawrence Phillips, the late Lawrence Phillips, at running back, and that was one of the more dominant teams I'd seen under the great Tom Osborne, Big C. How would they have fared if they were playing in today's competition, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, what Nebraska had at that time, they were ahead of their time as far as physicality.
Yeah.
This was a team that was built through the weight room, what most teams do today.
Yeah.
They were just physically dominant on people. They imposed their will, especially their offensive line did.
Yeah.
they impose their will on their opponents. You know, Tom Osborne was always going to go out and get a top-flight running back.
Yeah.
And he was going to run him in the ground. He had a couple guys. He had Heisman Trophy winners. He had Heisman Trophy contenders.
Yeah.
He had a quarterback that could run his system always. Nobody was bigger than the team. And the guys on defense were just straight-out vicious, Charlton. He had control of the Big Eight during his tenure at Nebraska.
Yeah, he did. They were weight room fanatics, and I remember that program from way back in the day. Oftentimes, they would get some of their top players out of California and Texas. That's how great of a recruiter he was. I want to say before we close out on baseball, what I love about doing Big C Sports, and we talk about Curt Flood when people make money, and just appreciate that guys have the opportunity because a man had some moxie, and he wasn't afraid to do what was right. I want to say you could follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe. That's iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. You can follow Big C Sports if you have television on Xfinity Comcast. But what I really love is the app by Alexa. When you go home, say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C. He'll do his thing. So I really thank our sponsors for all of their growth. Big C, I wanna finish off tonight's program with baseball and just seeing how well the Dodgers are playing out here on the West Coast. The Giants are also. Don't trade anybody just yet because the Giants are making a push. I think they've like 17-3 coming up in July. So hopefully, I don't know if they're going to keep Madison Bumgarner. But tonight's schedule, you have Boston at Tampa Bay. You have St. Louis at Pittsburgh. And you have Cleveland at Toronto. Cincinnati at Milwaukee. You have Miami at Chicago. Give me your thoughts on Cincinnati. They came out and they tried to have their players look like football players. They had sleeveless, and all of them had oil. They had that butter. We were talking about butter, Big C. They all put butter on their biceps, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I thought it was a great move for baseball. I mean, we had the Chicago White Sox do that back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And they even came out in short pants when they did that with the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah.
But I think it's great for baseball. I mean, you got to do things to, pump up the fans periodically.
Yeah.
And I think this is great, to have that throwback scenario. It used to be in the 70s that you wore that undershirt under your short sleeve shirt, Charlton. They just took the undershirt out, as we used to call them, the sleeves.
Yeah.
Back when I was in high school, all the jerseys were made like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great look. Baseball should look at it, using it more often with more of the teams, especially in the summer months when it's hot out there.
Yep.
It gives the fans something new to look at.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and Yasiel Puig, but they can pump and flex all they want. I think football players, because they have that real muscle, it's a little bit more defined. A lot of guys in baseball, they look like they're big, but when they take their sleeves off, they don't look as big as football players do. But you also look at tonight's schedule. You have Oakland at Houston. In Houston, that's a team that's going to make a run. You know they will. And I'm looking forward to them playing good baseball down the stretch. The New York Yankees at Minnesota. This is potentially, both teams look pretty solid this year. But the Yankees, they're a different breed of cat, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they've been dominant since day one. I mean, when you look at the Yankees as an organization, this lets you know how you develop players. They've had 12 players on the IL list this year that have missed significant time. And so the Yankees as a team have been able to withstand all the injuries that they've had, Charlton. They've been able to fight through the futility. They're one of the top home run teams in all of baseball, and they have the best record in the East.
Yeah, they're always. I want to see Dodgers-Yankees World Series. Yes, I'm biased, but I want to see it. They both came from the East Coast. You have Baltimore at Arizona, Chicago at San Francisco, Texas at Seattle, and Colorado at Washington to close out tonight's baseball schedule. I just want to thank everybody that follows Big C Sports, and anybody that's doing what you love. You just keep going. You just keep fighting through. We talked about the lunar moon landing and how the United States flying to the moon is a lot further than flying across the country, Big C. But that one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, I really believe in that, and that's what I want to do every day I wake up. And just thank God and keep going forward. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudidi Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I go back to that great musical group, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yes.
That's what the start of NFL training camp is all about.
Well, it's all about blood, sweat, and tears. But also, I've learned that you can use butter on bread. You can also use butter on car tires. I did try it for chapstick, but it's not the best flavor in the world. I think I'll stick to something else, Big C. But you can find how to use butter, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage all on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.